that was just following up on yesterday. If anyone, what you encountered building your interpretive pages using the includes in the includes folder, and just hoping, I'm just going to go over a few of those just a review of that, I guess. Let me get set up here. So yesterday we were working in Markdown, and we're over here in our pages folder. Let me get a little zoom in. And we were looking at the about.md, which is our stub file with this front matter in the top that tells Jekyll we want to process it, put it into a layout called the about layout. And then we had these includes that we were learning about for adding some features to that page. And then we had this markdown that we were writing to add some content to that page. So I hope everybody kind of had a chance to write some markdown, take a look inside that includes feature folder to see if there's some things with these comments up here that you might want to add into your markdown pages to display the objects in your collection. And so if there's any questions about that, just let me know. The next thing that I really wanted to just touch on quickly to cover for folks is we've been using Bundler, which is our dependencies management tool for Ruby. And one thing that you're going to notice that we haven't really talked about yet is there's this file called gem file with a big G. And this is the file that Bundler is actually looking at when you did that first bundle install to set up your system for that particular project. It's looking at this gem file, and it's just in that gem file, we can set what are the requirements to start up this project. And so in this case, we want to try to just keep it as simple as possible. And so the real requirements are just Jekyll. And then this other requirement here is WebRick, which is required for if you're running Ruby 3. And that's the web server that you can use for that dev server. And so when you get this fresh template pulled down to your machine, you have this gem file, and that's what you need one of those if you're going to use Bundler to manage your dependencies, because you have to tell your project what exactly are those dependencies that you want to have managed. And so if you're running any kind of Jekyll project, this is exactly the bundler file or the gem file that you would use, unless you start getting more complicated and need some other kind of dependencies. But this is just the really basic, this is what you need to run Jekyll on your machine. And so we're not, you could try to peg all your requirements to fit your development environment, so that, let's say Devin and Olivia and I agree on some development environment, we want to make sure anyone else can reproduce our project. We could set it very specifically, but we just keep it pretty open here because we're not doing anything super complicated that hopefully is going to break depending on the different versions of Ruby and stuff like that. The second thing that you're going to notice is once you run bundle install, you're going to end up with this file right here called gem file lock. And so that's what Bundler creates when you do that bundle install. It goes over to Ruby Gems, it looks at your gem file and sees what the requirements are, and then it lists out everything that was required to run those two gems that we've put in there. And in this case, it's quite a lot of stuff, and this is all really just the requirements of Jekyll. And it shows down here the platform that this was created on. So this is on Windows using git bash, and then these were the dependencies that were in the gem file, and this is the version of Bundler that was created there. A lot of times this gem file lock, if you created it at a different point when you had a different environment set up, can end up being just a problem, and really you just kind of want to start fresh and get it working again. The easiest thing to do, just delete this gem file lock. It's nothing sacred, unless in most cases, and then you can just do a new bundle install and create that gem file lock again. So, and then I'll get a new fresh gem file lock that actually corresponds to what I have installed on my system right now. And this is just kind of a quick fix to avoid issues with that gem file. So that was just a quick tip, and yeah, and those are also, like I said, just kind of general Jekyll project type tips. And I think I'll turn it over to you, Olivia.
Okay, thanks, Evan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about creating new pages, and I think that this portion of the workshop kind of gets into sort of the opportunities that are available to you that we've made available to you by making the code so open and accessible, and in ways that really allow you to kind of build on your knowledge of all of the different increments of CollectionBuilder and CollectionBuilder itself. So the things that I'm going to implement right now might not be things that you implement in your own collection that you're making right now, but it's good to keep in mind for the future. And they really relate back to that sort of interpretive aspect of that we started talking about yesterday with the about page, and that we think is especially great for teaching in the educational environment too. So the first thing I want to do today is create a new sort of interpretive page that focuses on Frank Robinson. And Robinson was the creator of Psychiana. So I want to create a new page that highlights him and kind of sort of like an about page, but has this interpretive content on it. But I also want to include a word cloud on that about page, because I think that that is it's a cool feature of DH, and would benefit users coming to the Robinson page. So for my word cloud, I'm going to think about what metadata field I want to include in my cloud. I already have a subject word cloud, but so here I am in the, I got to that page by clicking on the facets JSON, if you remember. So I'm using this sort of as a good overview of what my subjects and what my metadata fields are, and how many values are in each of them. And I think I want to create a creator word cloud. So I'm going to come back here, and I want a completely new page. I don't want to add it to my about page. So let's get started. I want to create a new page in the pages directory here. And you can do that by clicking this little add file button, or you can just right click and say new file. And I'm going to call my give my file the name Robinson.md, and MD stands for Markdown. And then remember, as Devin showed us yesterday, we need that front matter in our Markdown page. So if we were looking at the index yesterday, and remember, we have to have that title and layout and permalink in our stub here. There are a couple ways to make a cloud page. The subjects and locations are an example of a cloud page where the cloud takes up the entire width of the page and is pretty much the point of the page. So if I were to want to emulate the way that they're creating their pages, I could go to subjects MD or locations MD and just copy that front matter right out of that file and paste it into my Robinson file here. And there are, so now I have this front matter with my YAML variables that I need to adjust. So I'm going to go through and adjust them now. I'm going to say my title of the page is about Frank Robinson. And the layout I'm going to leave as cloud. So that's what is telling Jekyll to generate this as a cloud page. And remember, we can find our layouts up in the layouts folder up here. And if I wanted to click on cloud and see how that was structured, I could do that. But all I really need here is just the title of that, the file name of that file. I need to change the permalink next. So I'm just going to call it robinson.html. And then I want to specify what metadata fields I want to generate my cloud. And so this is a long string here, and this is just pointing to it's saying to Jekyll, look in your data folder, look for the theme YAML file, and then within the theme YAML file, look for the subject fields variable. And then whatever the value of that is, so if we go up here, whatever the value of this is, generate the cloud with that. But I don't want to do that. I want to actually specify a metadata field right here. So I don't need to go through the whole process of putting it in theme. Since that one was controlling subjects, I'm creating a new one here. I just want to add my creator field to the cloud fields variable. So I can save this. But before I go look at it on my site, the other thing I want to do is I want to add it to my Config Nav Csv so that it shows up in my navigation bar. I could add it as a brand new just tab in the navigation bar. Let me type this. So about Frank Robinson. And I just give it a permalink then that I gave it. You want to make sure that it matches. So you can go over here and copy the permalink just to make sure. But I actually want to make it a drop down from about. So let's see how to do that. I'm going to, in order to do that, I'm going to create a new row right under about, and I'm going to create a new page title called About the Collection. And this is just going to specify my about.html page. So instead of clicking on about and going right to the about page, I now have to click on about and then select about the collection to go to the about page. And you can call this whatever you want in your own collection. I'm just working off of what we have here. And then the most important thing you want to do is add a drop-down parent. So the drop-down parent is just going to indicate what display name do you want to be the parent of this drop-down menu. And in this case, I want about to be that. So I'm going to create a new column by adding a comma. And I'm going to make about the parent of about Frank Robinson too. And so about now has nothing next to it. And that's the way that it should be, because that's the parent of these drop downs that are going to come from it. So let's save and then regenerate and go see what that looks like here. So I'm going to refresh. And now my about has a little down arrow next to it. If I click, I can go to about the collection, which we worked on yesterday, and I can also go to About Frank Robinson, which is a brand new cloud page. So you probably, if you're doing this, want to add some text to this cloud page, and you could do that in the way that this is set up now. You could, give it a title. And maybe you want to add some text to it. So I pulled up some sample text here. But so if I save this, let's go look at it. So it's showing up here, but I don't really have that much ability to manipulate this this word cloud box at all. I can't add any text underneath it. All of the content that I would add to this markdown file is just going to be inserted right on top of the word cloud itself. So because I want this to be more of an interpretive page, sort of like the about page, or I want to kind of tell a story and then use my word cloud to support what I'm writing, I want to actually use the word cloud as an include, which is something that we have made an option as well. So in order to do that, I'm going to come back up and look in my includes folder. And I'm going to go to JS and find my cloud.js.html include. And so this is the file that I need to include. We need to add to this file a little example clip that we can, that you could just copy directly out of the file. We haven't done that yet, but it is in our documentation. So I'm going to go there and take a look. So this is, I'm in the new cloud pages section of the advanced portion of our documentation. And right at the bottom, there's this little blurb about how to add a cloud include. And we've included the example text you need to copy right here. So I'm just going to copy that and go. I'm just going to put it right in the middle of my paragraph here. So there's two portions of what you've added here. You need to have you need to have a div that has an ID of cloud. So that needs to be present in order for the cloud.js include to work. This class is just some extra bootstrap components that are styling the way that the cloud is showing up. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. And so you can alter those to help kind of manipulate, shift that cloud around the page if you want to. And then the second portion of this should look familiar to you based off of yesterday's lesson. This is the include itself. So it's saying look in the includes folder in the JS folder for a cloud.js.html file. And then there's three variable options you have to choose from. You can, the fields variable is required. So you want to make sure that this has a value. And I just want it to show up with creator right now. And this just mirrors what you should be familiar with this because it mirrors what's in the theme file for subjects and locations. So we have our fields, we have our min, and we have our stop words there. And here we have fields, min, and stop words. So min is just, remember, indicating how often a word has to appear in whatever field you've designated in the metadata in order to appear in the word cloud. This actually we noticed yesterday, actually you need to take away the quotation marks because when it's in quotation marks, it's going into JavaScript as a string, and that is messing it up. It needs to be an integer in order for the code to work correctly. We've actually fixed this, so when you clone CollectionBuilder GH in the future, you will be able to use quotation marks without a problem. But if you want to use this now with the code that you've already cloned, just remember that you have to take away those quotation marks in this case. And so I'm going to leave 2 there just for a second, and then stop words I'm just going to get rid of because there's not that many words in this field to begin with. So I'm going to save and then go take a look. And now I have my my cloud showing up, but you notice there's a little bit of it looks like something's wrong down here. It looks like there's like another cloud trying to be formed, and that is because we need to change the front matter too. So there's 2 things we need to change. We need to change the layout so that it is not only a cloud page, but it can be whatever layout you want to. I'm going to do full width page. And so you can go into your layouts and take a look. And so I'm using this one here. So you can go check that out if you want to. This is just going to allow my timeline JS to span the entire width of the page. And I'm not working on timeline JS, sorry. Actually, for this one, I want, we're going to look at full width page in a second. I want about, because I want my page to be that sort of really condensed style of writing that's on the about. So just like the about pages. So you could go to layouts and look at about and see what that looks like too. And then my permalink stays the same. This is the same page, but then I can just get rid of the cloud fields, because we're not generating the cloud from the front matter anymore. We're actually generating it from the include itself. So I can save this, go and take a look and refresh. And now my layout has been condensed so that the text is not as wide anymore. And the word cloud has a min of 2, so only so all of my words that only appeared once are taken out of it. But you can see I can write above or below it. I could include any of the feature includes that you were working with last night with the about page. And I'm going to go and get rid of this min because it's obviously not needed in my case. And then go take a look one more time. So I think that that is good for now. And I think that this is, again, something, word clouds seem to be something that's really popular with DH, and especially with teaching. When we teach Voyant, it's always a very prominent feature of Voyant tools. So this could be something that you maybe use with your class to kind of show how the subjects or whatever metadata fields are how they compare with one another in your collection, or if you want to make a point with writing about your collection, it's a really great feature to be able to include if you want to. Now I'm going to move on to our timeline JS, which again is another thing that I find very popular in DH projects in general. And Devin introduced this yesterday briefly, and I'm going to show you how to manipulate it a little bit more, how to customize the items that are actually appearing in your timeline JS. So let's say that I want to add a whole page dedicated to some sort of timeline JS visualization. And in this case, I want maybe sort of an image timeline, a timeline JS image exhibit where it's just featuring the images of my collection, because maybe the PDFs aren't as interesting to me or my users. So in order to do that, I can create another new page. And I'm going to call this one image exhibit.md, so another markdown file. And in this case, I could create my front matter just by hand, but it's always easier for me to just go grab it from another file. I'm going to grab it from the timeline file here, and I'm going to go to image exhibit. And then I want to change these variables just as I did for the original cloud page that I made. So I want to change the title to maybe something like Psychiana image exhibit. And the layout, so here is where I really want to make my my page to be as the maximum width that it can be. So I'm going to say full width page. And the permalink, I want to maybe make the same as the title of my file, so image exhibit.html. And then at this point, you're going to add that timeline JS include, just as we did yesterday watching Devin. You're going to go to feature, and you're going to look for the timeline JS HTML. And right at the top here, there's this little example snippet of code. You're just going to copy that, paste it right in. And if we save that now, and then add this, in this case, you could add it to your nav bar. I'm just going to add it as another dropdown just so we can see what a dropdown looks with a lot of items in it. So I'm going to say Psychiana image exhibit and go copy the permalink to make sure I have that right. And again, give it that parent of about. And then if I refresh, now I will be able to see my new page. And right now it's loading all of the items in my collection in the timeline JS. And you can see that we've made that page really wide now. So we've changed the layout to that full width to make this really kind of pop at you when you get to it. But I'm still including the PDFs right now, and I don't want to do that. So let's go and figure out how to make that edit. So you want to, what you're going to do is actually edit the what data is being is going into the timeline JS feature. And in order to do that, you want to go to assets over here in your repository, and you're going to go to the data folder. And so this is all the data that Jekyll is going to generate over, iterate over in order to generate the data that is used to, that is being exported from your collection or being consumed by the timeline JS feature, for instance, to generate the visualization. And that'll make more sense, I think, once we do this. So let's go ahead and we're going to look for the timeline JS.json file and click on that. And so here's the code that's going to be able to generate the data that's needed to produce that timeline JS feature. At the top here, there's some comments in the front matter that just kind of explain what's going on in this file. And I'm going to look for the very first line of the code below the front matter. And this is a line of liquid code. It's just assigning the variable items to equal your site's metadata that you specified. And then there's this where expression on it that is telling it assign the items to be used here where those items have a date. So that's what we're seeing here when we see item and where the items have a date, item date. And so at this point, that is what's going into that timeline JS, is all the items that have a value in your date field in your metadata spreadsheet. But in this case, I want the items, I don't want to indiscriminately pick all the items that have a date. I want only items that are an image. So in this case, I can add a little contains phrase to my include here. And remember, if I go to my metadata, I can see what field includes the word image. That would be format right here. So I can go back to my timeline Js JSON and say item format contains image, because remember our format for image is usually image slash JPEG. So now Jekyll's going to look in the format field and see if the word image appears in your value for that for your metadata records. And if it does, then it's going to add those records to the JSON that it's outputting and going into the timeline JS. So this should work now. I should have only images in my timeline JS. And it looks like it is because I'm not seeing that PDF that we just saw. And I could do the same thing with date, for instance. So say like I had a really important year that I wanted to really highlight in my timeline JS and just focus on one year. I could say item date contains 1936. And now I'm just in the year. I've only have images, or I only have items for the year 1936. So there are some PDFs in there now. Anything that appears during this year is going to appear here. So this kind of gives you some ability to manipulate what's showing up in your timeline JS. It's kind of fun to play around with if you kind of delve into your unique fields and include what you'd like to in the contains delimiter there. So let's take a look though at what this is doing. So we have changed this include here to narrow the amount of items that are going into our JSON. And so Jekyll is going to iterate over this, go through and create a JSON file. And that is actually not going to be found out here in your repository. It's going to be found in the site folder that Jekyll has generated that actually is the contents of your site. So it has the HTML pages that are built, and it has the assets folder right here with all of the data that is ready for export. So if I click on data and I click on timeline JS, this is where I actually see the timeline JS JSON file that is being used to produce the timeline JS visualization. And you know, you could take the JSON and use it for whatever you want to. It's the same as this is where all of our other data exports are going to. So like for instance, the facets JSON, if I go back to assets here in my repository, I can see facets JSON. This is the liquid that's being used to produce that file. And then I go to the site and I go to data and facets. I can see that that is produced here. And then this is what is downloadable from your website. Last thing I wanted to point out is for your timeline JSON, there is another option if it's not easy for you to, if you don't have just one field that you can use contains for and really pick out everything you want in your timeline JS. You can also curate it by hand in your metadata. You would simply probably work in Google Sheets and add another field to your metadata called headline. And you would populate headline with something like a title. And for every item that you want to appear in your timeline JS, you would give it a value for headline. And then you would come to your timeline JS JSON and say item, or get rid of the contains and say item headline. And you can call it, you don't have to call it headline. That's just what is in our documentation. So that is the example that I used. So I think that covers everything. I'll go ahead and get rid of, maybe put it back to image and then push my changes before I stop sharing. And I'm just going to do this through Visual Studio Code like Evan showed yesterday. So I'm going to say add interpretive content. And you can sort of do a mix. So I push up here or I committed up here, but I still need to push, and I'm going to do that from my terminal and say git push. And now we're all up to date. So let me find my little bar here and stop sharing. Are there questions about any of that?
That was really neat. And it really shows kind of that fluid adapting and moving between different things and just reusing it in different ways. I think that was cool.
Great, thank you. Devin, you're muted.
I was just saying good job.
Okay.
All right.
I had
So,
thumbs up. I thought that was communication.
if anyone has a question, I'll wait for 1 second and we can talk about that right now. Otherwise, I'm going to jump into a little bit more on deploying a collection and what it looks like to actually get that on the web. Okay. So we've already been deploying our sites on the live web using GitHub Pages, which is a really actually great service for this use case. Being able to just like click a button and have a live site up is pretty helpful. But in a lot of cases, you might want to move on to something a little bit more robust, or host it in your own infrastructure at your organization or at some other location. And so the first thing I just wanted to really quickly show is here's our DHSI demo that Devin and Olivia and I have been working on. I'm going to pull down those changes. And so far what we've been doing here, if you look down in my terminal, we've been doing the bundle exec Jekyll S. And so that is building out our site on the fly. And then it's going to take all of these files, it's going over this source code, it's knitting together those pages like we've seen, and like Devin tried to explain to us with his model the other day. And where those are all going is in this folder called _site. And so I think we've mentioned that a couple times too. And so these are the files that, man, Zoom has gotten kind of weird on my computer all of a sudden. Sorry, I cannot see any chats, so I hope that's not a problem. This _site is where all of those files that Jekyll has knit together from our source code and built into HTML, it's put it into that folder _site. And you can actually go look at these and see what they look like. And that is the thing that we're looking at, that WebRick, our little development web server, is actually serving up to us on this development server that's hosted at this weird URL, localhost. And so these files right here is what we're viewing here. And the one thing that you're going to notice in here is that all these files and all these URLs are relative, and they are going to point essentially as if we're hosted on this local host. So all of this stuff works. We can click on all these buttons. We don't go out to the live web. We just navigate around our development server that's on our local machine. Well, when you get into production on the live web, we're going to want it to have a real URL that matches where this actually is located on the live web. And so we have to actually have a different command to do that. And so if I Control C to stop that development server, the way you're actually going to do that with Jekyll is a command called build. So it's bundle exec Jekyll build is the command to do that. But there's one other little complication with that, in that we also have, well, I can just do that. So if I do my Jekyll exec bundle exec Jekyll build, what's going to happen is, rather than using those dev URLs, those localhost, it's going to actually go and look inside your config.yaml and try to find the real location for this site. In this case, this is a GitHub Pages site, and I don't have the real locations in there. We didn't do that in our config, because when Jekyll builds, or when GitHub Pages builds our site for us, they're going to automatically fill this in with the correct values. And so by leaving them off, you're going to avoid issues. It's not going to break because GitHub Pages knows where it's building the site correctly, probably better than you do. And so you just leave them off. But if we're going to do it on our own infrastructure, then we actually do have to fill those in correctly to get those final links for our production site to build out correctly. And so that Jekyll build is exactly what GitHub Pages is actually doing for us in the background. It's doing a Jekyll build, and then it's grabbing all the stuff out of the site folder. It's putting it onto that GitHub Pages server and then serving it up on the live web. And we don't have to do anything because all we have to do is just push the source code, and that happens automatically. So in the case of not building on GitHub Pages, you still have to automate that. You have to do that build process so that you can get those URLs pointing to the right locations. And so I want to just do a demonstration that kind of leads us through what that would look like. And to make that a little bit more complicated, I want to do that using a different template. And so so far, we've been going through CollectionBuilder GH this entire week, and it's designed as a kind of stripped down version. Almost everything is exactly the same, except for the way that it handles objects, because it's designed for deploying on GitHub Pages and working with that automated GitHub Pages build. And so the way that GitHub Pages build works, you can't have any plugins, and there's some limitations on the sizes and things like that. And so it's very simplified. You can see that it works really well. But if you move to one of these other templates, you have a little bit more options with what you can do with it. And so just to show how that kind of would look, I'm going to work on CollectionBuilder CSV, which is kind of our newest style template. And I'm going to do that same process. I'm going to use this template button. I'm going to create a new Dhsi Demo CSV version of it. And I'm just going to create that repository from the template. And so this is what you guys did on the first day to create your own version of CollectionBuilder. And that's what you would do every time you want to start a new CollectionBuilder project. I need to get this down onto my local machine. So I need to open my little terminal here. And I need to do my git clone. Make a copy from GitHub down onto my local machine. All right. And I have it here in my Dhsi demo CSV folder. And now what I want to do is just essentially port that collection that Olivia and I have been working on into the CSV version. And I'm going to do that by, here's the version that Olivia and I have been working on, or Olivia and Devin and I have been working on. And the first thing that we need is some objects. So in the GH Pages version, the big difference between that and all other versions is that there's no derivatives. You just have one image. That image gets displayed all over the site for every object. And so that's really easy because you don't have to do any work on generating derivatives. But it's not so good for your users and for the kind of performance of your site because there's only one size of the image, and you can't provide a bigger size that they might want to download versus a smaller size that's useful as a thumbnail on the pages. And so what we really want to do is be able to create some derivatives of those objects in a way that makes it easier to use on the web. And so actually, let's see, somewhere I've already done this. And so I just grabbed a selection of the objects that I was going to work with. And here's my CSV demo. And so and there comes with some demo objects in there. Here's the objects from our Dhsi demo collection. And I'm just going to I'll just copy them, I guess. I just copy them into my objects folder in my CSV project. All right. So now I need to open up the CSV project. VS Code just updated and is asking me if I trust my code in there. And so now I have this new project folder. The only thing I've done so far is put all these objects in here. And we'd like to create a small image and a thumb image for every one of these objects. And so what we've done with this template is we provide a thing called a rake file. And this is a feature that's built into Ruby. And this is, it's an automation feature. So you can build something that you're going to do over and over again. You can build a little task that will automate that task. And so what we've done is we have a rake generate derivatives task. And so if you have ImageMagick installed and you have GhostScript installed, then you can generate your small items and your and thumbnails for every image and PDF that you have in your objects directory using this little command that says rake generate derivatives. And so I'm just going to do that really quick. And I put that into my terminal. I say rake generate derivatives, press return, and you can see it's just putting a bunch of input. It's saying what it's doing. It's basically taking every image, looks at it, and creates a small image from that. And then it creates a thumbnail image from it. And all those thumbs and all those smalls are going to be JPEGs. So you could start this kind of collection from a TIFF or from a really big JP2 or whatever kind of image that you actually want people to be able to download. And then the last thing that it says down here is that it's created a folder or a list of all of those objects that it just created in a file called objects list. So if I look in objects and I go down here, it says objects list. And so this is basically the start of your metadata. And so I think we've had a number of people ask, like, how do you get your list of file names to start your metadata? And we have some ways to do that. And we've actually updated that this week. But this is one way that you would get that list. It basically has these 3 fields in a CSV, which are the fields that this particular template uses to figure out where the images are. And those 3 fields are all filled in for you with where those objects are located. And so that's a way you would grab that and you'd be able to start your metadata. Now, luckily for myself, I already did this and I created the demo metadata for that. And I basically merged the metadata that Olivia has been working on and put it into and added those columns onto it. And I did that using OpenRefine, because OpenRefine is really powerful for that kind of transformation and wrangling of your data, and it really great for that. And it took me like 5 minutes because I knew what I was doing. And so I have this new metadata that has those fields that are required. And so I'm going to just pop those in. So it started from that same metadata that we're using in GH. I added based on the file name field, I added these new fields that CSV template requires. And I'm just going to paste that metadata into my _data folder in my new project. So now in my brand new project, I have my metadata, I have my objects, and now the last thing I want to do is kind of port over some of the configuration from the original project. So this is my project that we've been working on this week, and here's my brand new one. And the first thing, these titles and description and authors, this bit is all the same, so I can just go and paste that right over here. Well, not exactly the same, I guess. And then there's one new field there called keywords. And then there's this bit here called the organizational branding. And right now, this is only in our other templates, and it's kind of the ability to like put your organization links and icons into the nav. And then right here, we have that metadata setting, and I need to, since I just grabbed that metadata from the other one and I moved it over into my new _data directory, I'm just going to paste that over because it's the same. The thing that's going to change here now is that we need to think about where is this going to actually be deployed. And so there's a lot of different options there. And so in this case, our university, ITS, provides us with a static server that's just really a file share. It looks like a folder of files on our office computers. And so we can just copy things into there, and that's the location that it's going to live. In some cases, maybe you're on Reclaim and you'll have your own domain that you set up, and a server through Reclaim or some other kind of shared hosting provider, and you're going to have a folder of files there where you can upload things either via FTP or often there's visual clients to be able to do that as well. And so this part is very dependent on exactly where you're going to be putting it. And so in this case, I have we have a domain, which is the libraries domain, and I'm going to put that in here at the URL base or at the URL value. And then the base URL is kind of where in that domain is it going to be located, at what path. And so I've set up a demo folder in our static server, and I'm just going to put it in there so that it matches where I want to put that on my static server. And so I have, let's see, somewhere, I have a lot of stuff open right now. Okay, so our static server from our ITS looks like a folder of files when you mount it on Windows. And you can just go in there and see the content. So this is the root level, lib.uidaho.edu. And then in here, I have a folder called CollectionBuilder. That's going to be the path of where the site is going to locate on the live web. And then I put in here that I want it to be at the DHSI demo. And so that's a folder right here that I created. And so this is going to be the file, the location, the final location of my static site. It's just going to be inside this folder of files that will become a place on the web. And so I had to set that up with those configuration variables so that when we do our build, those variables, those URLs will be used to figure out where everything is in that final live site when I build it. The other thing I'm going to quickly port over here is stuff from the theme. And so in my old one, we have some actually stuff set up, and I think that everything is the same, so I can probably just copy this all over. Yeah. So I'm just going to copy all of this, and I'm just going to paste it over my new theme, and that should bring in all of our new stuff from our old one. And there's probably some config browse. Maybe we had some customization there. I don't have those new pages and stuff that we ported over, but that would also work just fine. Maybe I'll just port over my about page. Anyway, so everything is really transferable between the two, and that's kind of part of our idea. Part of our concept is that you should be able to move between these things because you're investing in that data, in that description, in that metadata, in these objects, and the interpretive content around it, and it's not tied into any particular platform. So in this platform, it's also very easy to migrate between the different versions. So now I'm going to test this out. I want to do that bundle exec Jekyll S and serve it up and just make sure that everything's working. So I have this URL now, and you're going to see that this one looks a little bit different than what we've been working with on GH. And so you can see that it's adding in that base URL in front of that domain, because now we're no longer just at the root domain. It knows that we want it to be located somewhere else in this domain. And so we can see it's already, all that little stuff that I ported over is already working. We have the images and stuff look slightly different because now we have actually derivatives of them to work on. And oh yeah, something's not exactly right with the way that I have it set up. There's more features that can be added in here, and I seem to be missing some of them in these objects. And so I'll have to see if I can fix that quick. Let me look at my demo metadata. All right, I'm not going to fix it really quick, but in theory, it should be able to work. And I'm not sure what I did there, but let's just keep going and deploy it anyway. And so now I want to deploy it. And so I showed you that there's that bundle exec Jekyll build. And that would start that build process. It would use those real URLs and get a set of files that are no longer going to work in this dev server, but will work on your live server in the location that you've configured in config. But we also, to save your build time, we've also have some features that are only built during production environment. And so this is the same on GitHub Pages. When GitHub Pages does that Jekyll build, they're doing a production environment, which allows you to add your analytics and a whole bunch of meta markup that we just skip over during development build to just save you build time. And so we have to actually give it a production environment. And so to just make that easier, we have a task in here called Rake Deploy. So that's, again, going into this Rake file, we provided these kind of helpers that automate some of the things that you'll have to do. And so I'll do Rake Deploy, and then it's going to do this whole build process in the production environment so that we have this final complete site that we can deploy in this actual live location that we've designed for the web, or that we've configured on the web. And so how I'm going to finish off that deployment is to go over to, this is this Dhsi Demo CSV that I just been setting up. Here's the _ site folder inside of there. And so I'm going to go in that folder, and that's my complete site. This is my static site. It's got all the objects put in there. It's got all of the assets in here. And now everything that's in that _ site, that's what I need to copy over onto my static server. And so if I go back over to my static server here, this is the static server from U of I infrastructure. I can just copy these folders, these files, and paste them over here into that folder. And so that's copying them over onto our server. If you have FTP, the process really looks very similar, but it's just a sort of different way of transferring it between your computer and where the server is. And so in this case, it's going to take a couple minutes, I guess. And once it gets done, we should have a live site available on our own infrastructure. But there's a lot of files apparently to copy over.
Hey, Evan, do you still have the demo site running, or can you generate a local server? Just, I think it might be interesting to show them the difference between CSVs, item pages, and collection, and like the GitHub Pages versus item pages, which is basically one of the main reasons for the difference.
Yeah, no, I think that would be a good idea, except that the item pages seem to be broken in my demo right now. So so I don't want to do that. I'll see if I can get it fixed, and I'm not quite sure. I kind of set up this this demo, and then I have way too much stuff open right now, and so maybe what I need to do is refresh this metadata. But I can't rebuild it because right now I'm copying stuff out of that folder as well, and my demo server will erase that stuff. But let me see if I can get it working. Okay, so now it seems to be live. Let's see if it actually is. There's my thing here. All right, so this is our new deployment that we just put up. And like Devin said, you know, it's going to look different than GH. It should look different in different ways than it currently is. And there's parts of it that are broken because I must have added some additional items that I didn't actually do the images for. And so this is, yeah, so for some reason the items are not set up correctly right now, but They should look different. So this one is a PDF item. You know, the displays are not correct right now, but I will see if I can debug that at a certain point, and then we can demo that a little bit better. But the main thing that I wanted to show here is really just making sure that people understand that there's a different point of deployment when you're doing it not using GitHub Pages. And the other thing that I wanted to point out here is that it's also agnostic about where those objects are located. And so we don't necessarily, in this case, I just had the objects in that folder, and then copied all of the website and all of the objects over onto my web server. That's a really easy and fast way to do it. A lot of times what happens is that you actually want your objects in a different location. And so you can take your objects and put them on a different location on your server or in a totally different server. Like maybe you have your objects in DigitalOcean or Amazon S3 because it's a fast object store, and then you have your site somewhere else in your other hosts or on GitHub Pages. And so that is definitely very easy to configure and add into any of these templates so that you don't have to have that kind of like the site and the objects are all in the same place. So that is an important concept to understand about the deployment as well. I think that is the basics that I wanted to get covered here. Was there anything else that you're thinking, Devin, for deployment there?
I had something that I thought of. I'm going to share my screen real quick so Evan talked about this at the beginning, but we went through quite a bit there, and I wondered if people maybe don't want to port their stuff over into CSV just yet, but like really don't want to host on GitHub Pages. Remember that you would come to your config YAML in your current repository that you're working on now, and just comment out your URL and base URL and make them whatever, just as Evan did in CSV, just make them point to wherever you're going to be hosting your repository. And then if you wanted to build out your collection so that it's ready for production, we don't have a rake file in GH, so you'd have to use this other command that's telling Jekyll to build your environment in a production setting. So I can put this in the chat too. And at that point, then it would look exactly like what Evan did. You would copy your files over to whatever server you're going to. But that, I just wanted to clarify that for people. So we recommend the CSV version because it does allow you to do those derivatives, which is really great. And once Evan gets the examples up of the how the items are working, that is a really great feature too. But if you put a ton of work into your work right this week and just want to use this one for now, you can do that too. If you're not putting it on GitHub Pages, which is what we assume most people are going to do with this anyway.
Okay, so I figured out the problem. I'm gonna show it just as like another debugging thing. So in CSV, there's these three fields, or these four fields right here: object template, object download, image thumb, and image small. And the reason why we do that is that the templates, GH and Content DM and SA, the other templates that are out there right now, they have a lot of reasoning about where to find images built into the template, and that ends up limiting the ability to really quickly customize things. And so we've pushed some of that reasoning into the metadata rather than into the template. So therefore, it'll be a little bit easier for people to customize where the objects are coming from and what they're pointing at, and support more types of objects without having to go and write a bunch of code and edit the places where it's called in 100 different places in the template. And so that's why we've done that. So we push in some of the work into metadata rather than into the template code. But what I did is I used this term object template, which after discussion last week, we actually changed it to display template. So there, it was looking for an object template. You can see it didn't break anything, but it just made all of our item pages into default item pages that weren't very interesting. And so if I change that one metadata field and I do a new bundle exec Jekyll serve, now we'll actually have some different looking item pages with that hopefully are working correctly. All right, so here's our new demo. So now if we go and look at some of our, now we still have a gallery, and if we look at some PDF objects, they're going to look pretty different. You have a PDF, and rather than having the kind of display of the PDF, we have this derivative small image to be able to look at, and then you can download the PDF, which is typically a little bit better for users because they don't necessarily want to load, like especially if your PDFs are huge, you don't want to have to load that PDF until they know for sure it's what's relevant to them. And so the cool part about that setup is that our other image layouts are really complicated and hard to look at and try to figure out. And so instead, each of this display template, anything in that column, actually just corresponds to one of these layouts in here. And so this item layout for PDFs is very similar to what Devin was demonstrating on the how to customize your homepage. And so you can just look at this layout. It uses some kind of includes that are related to things that you might want on an item page. And then you can really quickly customize these without having to like dig through mountains of code to find where you can try to customize it. This also enables you to create new item types really quickly. So if I have something that's like an image, but I want multiple images to show up there, I could just copy this item image layout and set up a new one that includes multiple images, and then just have it correspond to whatever metadata fields that I've set into my metadata CSV. And so it just, again, is trying to simplify customizing it and not just using the default version of CollectionBuilder. This enables you to kind of more quickly and agile to create new things with it, in theory. I think that's deployment, unless people have questions. Most of the questions get very specific to different deployment contexts, and so it's really hard to like write the documentation and describe exactly how it's going to work because it's really contextual to what your server setup and your IT setup and what you're comfortable doing. So those are some of the more difficult questions to explain.
Great, thanks, Evan. Thanks, Olivia. That's a lot, but there's, I think that's, and looking at sort of, if you want to know kind of like the future of CollectionBuilder, we're hoping to kind of limit it to just GH in this CSV version rather than these other types floating around, so that the CSV version accounts for all sorts of different. You could mix a content DM and an Islandora and a Mukatu all together or something, so that allowing it that sort of the collection is something you build on your own. It's not necessarily something that needs to be located with an institution too. I think is also kind of one of the conceits that we continue to hold on to, but it's probably less and less necessary. And also kind of limits the idea of collections themselves. So I'm just going to do a little short presentation about kind of where CollectionBuilder is, like how it's kind of grown within the University of Idaho, and then talk about the future a little bit more. So let me share my screen. I'm going to go ahead for that. Actually, so I'll put this in present. So this is just going to talk about kind of how we've kind of like evolved in our thinking about CollectionBuilder from like a tool that we use for all sorts of things to kind of a template or a model that we give people to kind of work with and build from, and then to sort of thinking of it as a service that we provide on campus now, and really what has become an infrastructure for the web services of our library and for all of our digital scholarship projects. So I want to look at a few kind of permutations of that. One of the cool ones that we've been working on this year is called the Idaho Harvester. And for this one, it's kind of a collection builder on a collection builder. So it's a blog and a working collection of the University of Idaho's Library Special Collection and Archives. And we harvested a lot of material. And there's their nice chat. We harvested a lot of their Tumblr posts and a bunch of other stuff, even from back in the 90s. These digital memories things are actually 90s portions. And allowed them, and now they're writing just like we write the interpretive pages. Our staff down in special collections and faculty are writing kind of a lot of those things using the includes that we have and connecting to our digital collections, but also to a collection that they maintain here of items that they kind of come across on a regular basis. So they're scanning things for patrons, coming across cool things, and this allows them to kind of build this ad hoc digital collection that eventually we hope to kind of like curate and pull into our official digital collections too. But this gets things out there, gets them kind of an ability to kind of do these cool series and things like that. But all of this is built upon a kind of, you know, I think we call this a Frankenstein's monster of collections. We also, another thing that we, oh, I'm gonna go back one more. Let's see here. Well, I'll just go to this one. The other one that was on that page is one we put together really quickly last spring, obviously, as the pandemic was, you know, coming to its sort of starting to rear its head. We realized that it would be great for the university to have kind of a context to see what the 1918 flu pandemic was like on campus. And so one of our, Courtney Burge, who's a staff member in special collections, put this together, and you might recognize a lot of the features here. We were able to put this together really quickly. She was able to do the metadata and pull things together. And then we were able to kind of, you know, using those includes and those options to pull in this collection of, you know, clips and you know, sort of images and other and kind of in a larger interpretive account of how the university dealt with that pandemic. So that's one way it sort of started to permutate. It's like the service is, it's a quick kind of instantation. You know, we can do the digital collections really quickly. We can also really, you know, mess with what we have to sort of see where we can go. But we also started to pull some of the code from within CollectionBuilder into our sites as well. This is another example of our special collections, and this might remind you of the browse page. So what we redid the special collections website. Part of the Harvester came out of that this fall. And what we really wanted was, you know, they were kind of pointing people in a bunch of different directions using Archives West, which is a big finding a discovery platform sort of managed by the Orbis Cascade Alliance. But we really wanted people to kind of stay in our own site when they were like kind of looking for things. So we helped them kind of put together a big spreadsheet that then we could use our kind of our Browse.js code within CollectionBuilder to use this sort of thing. And so it's using that same kind of, you know, these boxes, lumbering, the sort thing that you see there. And so we were able to do this, you know, kind of use these ideas and use these discovery methods in a tool like that. And then in a very similar instance, we were kind of tasked to develop this instruction by topic page that allowed, you know, and we added some cool circles and some cool colors. You can see it's probably me and Marco, who's getting GitHub, guess who that is. And this is a kind of way for faculty members to discover the expertise at the library and request instruction for various topics. Library tour, you can see who's there. And if you go through and request instruction, you'll go through a customized Qualtrics form, a survey form that then sends an email back to those instructors. We've also been developing kind of like collaboratively across the state. We're currently building this digital library of Idaho, which we're hoping to release in the fall. And this is CollectionBuilder, but it's customized with some kind of fancy map features and kind of highlighting some of the partners that we have. We've been working with Boise State, Idaho State University, and you can limit by. And then what this has become is a kind of an exercise in metadata for all of us. You know, so we could provide the infrastructure, the forms that they want to kind of build this site into. But what we really needed from all of the collaborators is just some really intense sort of metadata work. They need to go into their collections, give those collections the certain regions that they pertain to. We had them assign one main topic, so you could see that. Or a type of material types, like if they had newspapers, then we wanted to have that in there. And all that kind of allowed for these really cool kind of expressions. And then someone could go, you know, from down in, Camas County and see those collections related to that very small high desert county, although only 3 showed up. So something's broken that I need to fix, which happens to me every time I visit this site. So that's another kind of permutation of CollectionBuilder. And then the last one I wanted to kind of talk about is like a very kind of advanced permutation. And this came out of our CDIL graduate fellows last summer. They were looking at the extirpation of the North Idaho's mountain caribou population. The last one was seen in, I think, 2019. And so they went through and they interviewed a bunch of people who had encounters with caribou in the wild, and they put up trail cams and they did a lot of cool things. And so they really had some really interesting ideas. So this is actually that kind of like collection banner, but just kind of limited just to that, just to the page, and then things are moved around. And they wanted to kind of limit people's interaction, and they wanted to kind of make people feel uncomfortable. So we made a fake 404 page for them that said no caribou. But then they, then we wanted to, then they, once they got into things, they also did some pretty intense interpretive work using actually essays that they had written for some of their classes about their experience. And they're actually pretty good essays, and they had quite a few adventures up on the Selkirk Mountains, which are on the between the border between Canada and the United States north of us. But then the cool thing here is this is a collection builder item page, but with a map underneath. And then what we were able to do is kind of make it so that as you want to move through the map, and I'm just pushing the arrow keys here, you could also just click on this. The items are going to move as well. So you are, this whole idea of this was having a kind of a deep map experience and allowing the user to kind of move through their options here and experience all the oral histories that they took and all these trail cams and things like that. And you can see some of those, and they have videos as well. And it's actually quite kind of wonderful to click through these and kind of experience, like you kind of get a feeling like you're there. And so this has all kind of come together, working with other people, just like we're working with you this week. We've brought back a lot. We've kind of improved a lot of the kind of code and includes from our experience this week. And that's kind of the model that we're kind of working on, is that we want to keep building all these things. And then we will eventually, this is a hard one to kind of make kind of easily available, but eventually we want to make a lot of this stuff available so that people can, pull out code for certain projects, look at certain things, be able to drop a layout that they want onto their site and move forward with it without a whole lot of, editing and learning learning that thing, but be able to build these things in these, cool Frankenstein's monster sort of way. So what Collection Builder has become to us, it really has been, it's really established. I mean, not only to speak about the grant that we're on right now, and hopefully the grants that we will get, this sort of infrastructure for our center, for our DH center on campus. It's allowed us to kind of do a lot of projects, not only this project, but all of our DH fellow projects have been kind of with using Collection Builder or similar kind of techniques, and kind of then advertise our kind of wares to the rest of the campus. Our kind of present future moment is this summer we're going to work with some of our advisors and some of our collaborators to set up this site called libstatic. And we have libstatic sort of set out there as a methodology, and Olivia or Evan will probably put it in the chat. But what we're hoping to do is create this libstatic.github.io site as not only like the methodology kind of discussion of being open and static and kind of modular, but also have a lot of learning resources, like all the documentation that we have, but look at some of these other kind of tools and techniques that are available. And Olivia's going to talk more about some of that tomorrow. But there are other kind of tools like ours, or templates, really. I mean, this is what people are starting to call more templates. Wax out of Wax and Ed, which are developed by Alex Gill and Mari Nairop. And there are some others like that too. One we do is called Oral History as Data, which turns oral histories via CSVs into kind of web projects. The future, the kind of like, rocket future here, if we can get, we also have a kind of more advanced developer right now, and he's working on creating sort of a standalone version that would connect a bunch of collection builders together using Elasticsearch. That would enable sort of a better kind of like robust digital library. This is the kind of last step we need before we step off of our constant DM and just use this. And we're also going to be working with one of our partners, the local historical society, to do this as well. We'll see how that goes. And then one other thing, we're kind of, is there a way to kind of containerize this? Is there a way to make, like VS Code or GitHub Desktop are these little Electron apps, a kind of a way for this to be a little bit more easy to use. Not so much for, the level of kind of student we have here, because I think it's really valuable to learn all these kind of techniques and tools that to come back to your jobs and your libraries and your organizations. And use those, but for like the smaller organizations, the local historical societies and stuff like that, if we could do that, it'd be great. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but that's something Evan was a PI on a grant application right now for. So I just want to thank you all for your engagement this week. We've got, one more day, and we'll have a couple, we're going to talk about libstatic, and we're going to discuss some readings tomorrow, but then we're hoping to have you all kind of show off your material tomorrow, and kind of share each. So we'll do the initial kind of presentations and maybe talk a little bit about the reading, and then for discussion, and then for the show and tell, we'll turn off the recording. We can all kind of be together. So that's, I'm sorry. It would be nice if we had more time and we were in person. We could do kind of discussions throughout the week and talk more about this kind of these ideas and the philosophy and methodologies informing this work, because we kind of have to skim over that to just inundate with so much tech. But there's a lot of thought that's gone into this over the years. There's a lot of kind of philosophy behind this argument that developing these skills and these tools and these practices is good not only for the individual user but for the organizations, and getting us off some of these platforms that are locking us into overloaded sort of tools. So that's it for my presentation. It looks like we're a little early. Olivia, do you want to? I think we can stop here for the day and then just answer questions and